So at the time of recording, it's early in January, and a lot of people are trying to lose weight and get healthy, right? It's a New Year's resolution. People are coming in waves to try to do these things. And from my perspective, I think a lot of people try to tackle too much too quickly, or they don't know really where to go, and they end up kind of doing a little bit of everything and don't have clear direction. And that's why most resolutioners and most new gym goers fall out after about 3 months. So I want to go over some of the phases of fitness and fat loss today to kind of help you guide what you need to do and what's going to be the most productive for your goal and kind of where you are in that phase and kind of lead you through that. My name is Mike Pfeiffer, co-founder of Grit Fitness. I've been a health and fitness coach for over 20 years, and in that time I've helped hundreds of people live longer and get stronger. And I want to use that information that I've gathered over 20 years of doing this successfully and helping people out to guide you through some of this. So, phase one, and these are going to get higher in difficulty as we go down in the phases. So phase one is if you have 30 plus pounds to lose or you're over 30% body fat. And if you don't know these numbers for yourself, that's going to depend totally on your goals, right? So you might do the little pinch thing, you might do the bioelectric impedance scanner. You know, at our gym we have a Staiku where you stand and it does a 3D body image of yourself. It's pretty cool. But this is going to let you know your body fat range. So if you are greater than or equal to 30%, so if you're 30% body fat or more, this is the stuff that's going to move the needle the most for you. And I did a little hangman here, but I'll fill these in as we go. And then 30 plus pounds, that's going to be completely dependent on the person. So typically these two things are going to correlate to some degree. So if your body fat is at this level, you're probably going to be in this range or more, okay? And we'll get into the other ranges later. So the whole point of this is, depending on what phase you are in, what are the most important things that you can do? I don't want to use the term easy because that's not true, but simple. Like, what are the simplest, most straightforward, most actionable things that you can do right now to help you move from phase one to phase two? May or may not include going to the gym, right? We'll get to that later, but just how can you get what you want out of this? So the first one, if you're above 30%, is whole foods. I'm probably in the way of the camera right now. Whole foods, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? That means that when you go to the grocery store, you're staying away. Now that I think about this, you've probably heard the term like hit the perimeter of the grocery store, not the aisles. That's pretty accurate. So if you walk into a grocery store, you're going to notice all the produce is on the outside, refrigerated stuff on the other outside, and then all the box stuff and bag stuff is in the inside. And that's the stuff you want to stay away from. So whole foods. In this case, we're talking apples, bananas, kale, spinach, potatoes, sweet potatoes, all your fruits, all your vegetables, your nuts, and your meats. Dairy can fall into that. Most basic dairy stuff is non-processed, so cheeses and that kind of thing can work. Maybe not highest on the list, but it's definitely still okay at this point. So if you think about food, did it come from the earth? Did it come from an animal? Was there very little done to it before it can go to your plate? And that's going to be whole foods. So shop the perimeters, not the aisles, and really focus on getting things that are non-processed, okay? And then within that framework of whole foods, we're going to go less carbs and lower glycemic index. Now, glycemic might be a big word to some of you if you're not familiar with it. It's something I talk about a lot. So the glycemic index is a measurement of when you eat a food, specifically carbohydrates. It applies to every food, but the one that's the most concerning is carbohydrates. So when you eat a food, what happens to your blood sugar? What does your blood glucose do as a result of eating that food? So things that are lower glycemic have less of a response to your blood sugar, so your blood sugar stays nice and stable as a result of eating it. Things that are higher glycemic shoot your blood sugar up, and that causes you to crash down later to re-regulate that. So if you've ever had ice cream or cereal or something like that, you don't eat for a couple hours, and all of a sudden you get, a little loopy or a little clammy, a little lightheaded. That's because your blood sugar, blood glucose, glycemic, we're just going to use the glycemic index in this iteration, has now started to drop, and your body's trying to hit baseline. So if you go to your doctor and they do your blood glucose panel, 80 to 100 is kind of that normal range. So when you dip below that is when you seek things that are sweet, and when you dip above that is when you're more likely to develop diabetes when you have that elevated level consistently. So less carbohydrates in total, that just means that of the foods that you're getting, you don't want a majority of that to come from carbohydrates. So you want to have a couple servings of fruit, maybe a serving of grain or potatoes or sweet potatoes or something. But you don't want a ton of your food coming from that. You want it to come more from proteins and fat sources, okay? Because that's going to be the quickest thing to move this needle. So just going back to the start, whole foods. So perimeters, not aisles. Less carbohydrates in total. So when you're picking out those things from the perimeters, try to pick more things that aren't carbohydrate heavy, and then stick to things that are lower on the glycemic index. And if you're not sure what those numbers are, you can look online. Very easy to find. Glycemic index of oranges, look it up, right? Glycemic index of rice, different kinds of rice, and you can look it up. And try to stick to things that are lower on that, which 55 and below is probably going to be your best target. All right? And then 20 plus minutes of movement. And this is per day. Okay. So it doesn't have to get super intense. You're not at a level, when you're up here, you don't need to go high level stuff. Unless you just want to accelerate the process, then you can do more of the things that are along here. But I don't want things to be insurmountable. I want things to be actionable for you that are not as complicated, not as complex, and are going to get the needle moving to go from 30 to less than 30 pounds to lose. So that's the goal of what I'm trying to teach you today. So 20 minutes of movement can be, taking a walk during lunch. It can be hopping on a bike for 20 minutes. It can be walking outside. It can be walking your dog. If you don't have a dog, obviously it doesn't apply. But just 20 minutes. I don't think that's going to be too hard for most people to fit in. My suggestion would be do it first thing when you get up. Do it at lunch if that's something that works within your work schedule. Or do it before dinner, after you get home. Don't try to push it off till at night, till you're done with everything, and before you go to bed, kind of go 20 minutes, because it'll be really easy to push off. And my preference for most people, just because it's the most successful thing I've seen, is to do it right away in the morning. It's done, you don't have to worry about it, you don't have to think about it, you've already done it. And then whatever happens in the rest of your day, you don't have to deal with it, and you've already hit that mark, okay? So, rephrasing that, whole foods, less carbs, lower glycemic index, 20 plus minutes of movement. That alone will help you get below this 30% body fat marker and get under having 30 pounds to lose over time, okay? If I were to give you sort of an estimate, this might be like your minus 1 pound a week. If you were to do all of these things successfully, consistently. So say you started in phase 1, you did this for about 6 weeks, you got down, let's say you needed to lose 45 pounds, you've now lost about 15 pounds from implementing all these things. You've now graduated, right, to phase 2. And what phase 2 is, if you've got 15 to 30 pounds to lose, and your body fat range is in that 20 to 30%, okay? Now remember I said before, these get harder as you go down in phases, right? Which basically means you either have to do more or you have to take more away from yourself, right? Either in food and behavior, different things, right? So now, in order to go to this part, you're gonna have to add a little bit more. And I would say that probably the majority of Americans, I live in America, that this is the population that I deal with, are probably in phase 2. They're not, way off the wheels where they've got a ton of weight to lose. They're not way down here, like in my range, where they're trying to get single-digit body fat and see their abs and that kind of thing, right? They're just, I'm a little overweight, I don't feel great, I know I need to lose a little bit, my pants are a little tighter, I just need to do a little bit more to kind of check that next level, right? So the bulk of people are probably gonna fall in this, which you do need to stack these skills first, right, before you do these. And if you don't already possess these, you definitely don't want to go down here to these unless you're just making an absolute dedication to this new lifestyle to handle all these goals, right? So, phase 2, eating out, right? I didn't restrict that in the first one, but eating out 4 to 6 times a month is kind of your cap, is what I would say. And while you may not think of it this way, going to Subway, going to Burger King, ordering in lunch, from a restaurant, 4 to 6 times a month is it. It's just too hard to control the variables when you eat out. You don't know how much butter they're using, you don't know how much oil they're using, you don't know how much sugar they're adding to stuff. You can guesstimate, and some of the franchise places will have more specific measurements, but there's There's too much wiggle room, there's too many question marks. It's just gonna make it really, really hard for you to succeed, okay? So plan for this. Maybe plan your favorite things in that time. I, in this phase 3, and I'm, might be phase 4 that's not been on here for myself, I eat out once a month is my plan. There are life circumstances that sometimes change that, but that's kind of the biggest grace I give myself is just the one time a month, right? I prep all my food. So eating out 4 to 6 times a month, just limits your chance of making mistakes that aren't even necessarily your fault. They're just calories that you can't account for that you're consuming that are going to derail your weight loss, okay? And then one thing to note on this, let's pin this up here. If you want to accelerate this process, when you eat out whole foods. So don't get your pastas, don't get your pizzas, don't get your things that are big conglomerations of different ingredients. Yeah, they probably do taste better, I'll give you that. And hey, you want to do that a couple times, not the end of the world. But if you're trying to lose weight, you've got to change your behavior and you've got to do things that are a little bit differently. So when you eat out, try to stick to things that are more on the whole food spectrum. So beans, rice, meats, veggies, right, those kind of things. So a lot of Mexican restaurants are great for that because you can get stir fry. I guess it's not stir fry, it'd be fajita style, right? If you're going to Asian food, you can get stir fry. Usually we'll have, rice, beans, meat, vegetables, that kind of thing. So try to steer all of your eating out. Steak and potatoes, right? Perfect example, is going to fit in this whole foods category. Of course, the kitchen's going to add some things that you can't control, but you're still going to be mostly into this. So it's just going to help you, if you're going to eat out anyway, hit whole foods, and you're just going to do that much better when you do eat out, so you're less likely to have those problems, okay? So less alcohol. Now this varies per person. I'm going to set the barometer at 8 to 10 drinks a month as what I would consider low alcohol consumption, right? Lowest alcohol consumption is 0, but if I'm going to, if you're trying to do this and get below this range, this is probably what it's going to take, okay? So I know a lot of people that have been hanging out in this 15 to 30 pound range for a long time, and it's mostly because of this, because they are exceeding this number. And that's 2 to 3 drinks a week, depending on how you divide it. Per week, right? Not per night, not per 2 or 3 days, not per weekend. 8 to 10 drinks for the whole month, okay? And then now we're gonna get into, you're gonna need 25 plus grams of protein in each meal. The reason for this is protein is going to help you build muscle, which is going to tap into this thing we're going to do later. Having more muscle increases your metabolism overall, and it also increases your ability to handle different glycemic loads and more carbohydrates if you're eating them. And then it also just makes your body burn more calories. And you're going to be working out more, you're going to need more calories to sustain you. So now we're changing that math. So now it's working in your favor. Because we're going to add 30 plus minutes of movement and 2 times strength per week. Okay? So now we've just bumped this up a little bit, 20 plus. At this point, you should be used to that, right? So you should be able to find 10 more minutes to put into that. And then this is on top of 2 times a week strength training. So a lot of people that come to see us at Grit, this is our baseline parameter for what we want you to do, especially if you're in this range and you're trying to lose weight. If you're just trying to get healthy and just trying to do other things, there are some different parameters that we might, associate for you. But in general, 25 grams of protein a meal, 30 minutes of movement, which is not part of this strength training. So 30 minutes of movement a day. Again, walking, cycling, hiking. Doesn't have to be super complicated. Just get your body moving 30 minutes a day. And then 2 of those days, get in some strength training. If you're not sure how to do that, obviously we can help you with that, but you can go to a gym, you can find some sort of programming. I'll do another video on how to program that, especially for beginners, kind of the best way to do that. But 2 times a week strength training. And then this protein is fueling your strength training, which is going to fuel your muscle building and is going to elevate your metabolism and make it easier for your body to burn fat. Okay? So now you're going to tap into this a little bit easier. And you're still at this level, probably only going to lose a pound a week. And depending on where you're trying to go, right? That's going to depend on how long it'll take. So it'll be 15 weeks. You know, if you're down here at the bottom, it'll be 30 weeks if you're at the top. You get the idea. And this number, this pound a week, is, from my perspective, sort of the safest number to lose body fat, not lose muscle mass, and steadily do that over time without careening off and, you know, making things really hard on yourself. Because a lot of times if you lose a lot faster than that, psychologically plays a little more havoc on you and you end up rebounding more and you lose muscle mass. And when you lose muscle mass and you go back to eating kind of the way you used to, you gain it back even faster because your metabolism is now slower. So we don't want to do that, obviously. All right, and then phase 3, when you only have about 15 pounds to lose and you're trying to get in under that 20% body fat. And this is where you're going to start seeing your abs, you're going to start having some vascularity, right? This is a much more exponentially difficult part to get here. And you can lose weight faster this way if you're in this camp, right? And you're in phase 1 and you implement phase 3 strategies. You can lose weight faster, but the amount of precision and the amount of behavior modification that it takes is a lot harder. So I'd rather set you up for success and graduate, you know, phase 1 to phase 2 and then go to phase 3 once you've gotten that far, okay? I want you to succeed in here. I'm not trying to, you know, give you all the tools that are going to make you successful and then you implement them and you burn out because you went way too hard too fast, right? I'd rather you build upon successes and do better over time. So phase 3, 15 pounds to lose. So this is, so I'll put over here first, meal planning, right? Or prepping, depending on how you want to look at it. And you're measure your food, okay? This doesn't necessarily mean you're on a food scale, although, you know, anecdotally, that's what I do. I've been doing this 20 years. I still tablespoon all of my oils. I measure by grams all of my nuts, and I do the scale, you know, in grams or ounces, depending on what I'm eating, on my meat and on all my grains, right? 20 years in, I still do it because I know that's what it takes for me to sustain the level that I want to be in, right? So that's not something that goes away. These are all additive. You're not then taking these out. Okay, so measuring your food, you can use things like MyFitnessPal, right, which is a big one. Owlwrap Trainerize that we use at Grit has a meal tracker in there, but you've got to measure your food if you really want to get to this number. You're not going to be able to just try a little harder, do a little better, and get a six-pack. It's just not going to happen. The people that you see online, the people that you know in your life that have a six-pack, unless they're just total genetic outliers, are doing some version of measuring their food and some version of meal planning and prep. Okay, and then now we're elevating ourselves to 45 plus minutes of movement and 3 times a week strength. I always worry my handwriting, nobody can read, but hopefully you're getting the idea at least through my words. So now we're really elevating this because now you've got to burn more calories and you've got to burn more fat, right? So 45 minutes of movement per day in this phase and 3 times a week hitting that strength marker. Okay, and then now you've gotten used to 25 grams of protein per meal. If you're somebody that only eats 2 meals a day, right, that's only 50 grams. That's not going to be enough for you to really elevate the strength training portion of what you're adding in. So now it's your ideal body weight in grams of protein. What do I mean by that? If you're going to strip away all of your fat and only have your muscle mass left that you're fueling, that number in grams of protein. So a lot of people will do more than that. There are reasons to do more than that. I think for the general population, and hopefully most of the people that this video is going to help, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. You just need to get your ideal body weight in protein. So say you're 200 pounds and you want to get down to 185. Well, your body fat isn't going to be 0, right? When you get to that level, it's going to be 10%. Let's just, you know, make up numbers here. So it's not going to be 185 grams of protein. It's going to be 185 minus 10%. Right, so I don't feel like doing math right now, but let's just say that's 160 grams of protein for this example. Right, so that's what you need, which is your ideal body weight in protein. Right. So hopefully this is enough to kind of get you started. I'm going to rehash it again in a second. But there are 2 reasons I wanted to do this. For people that are new and are trying to implement these kind of programs in their life, to show you kind of the best levers you can pull early on to make the biggest impact. And the practices that you can stack on top of each other to make you more successful and more likely to graduate through these phases. And then also to just show you that you don't have to do all of these higher intensity things from the jump. And I'm not here to try to assuade you from, hopping in with full momentum, because I think that's awesome. And momentum is that thing that gets you pushing and gets you going. But these behaviors over time are going to lead to lasting success. And especially at Grit, and especially my philosophy is I don't like short-term solutions because I don't think they lead to long-term outcomes. So I'd rather teach you long-term practices that are going to have a bigger impact on your life and increase the lifespan of that life. So just to reiterate, phase 1, when you got 30 plus pounds to lose or you're over 30% body fat, you're going to concentrate on whole foods. So hitting the perimeter of the grocery store, staying out of the aisles. And if you got kids and that's a little tougher, I understand. As best you can, try to get your kids to adopt a more whole food lifestyle. People say it's more expensive. I don't doubt that it is, but I think if you plan ahead a little better, it doesn't have to be quite as bad, because rice and beans are quite cheap and you could do that as a part of your diet. Vegetables, you can get a lot of different vegetables, especially if you go to a local store or a farmer's market or something like that. You can usually pick up stuff that's a little bit cheaper, and you can find stuff that's in season that's a little bit a better deal. Also lets you experiment a little more, try different things, and culinary wise, experiment a little bit, because you can find different ingredients that are on sale that week and do different things, right? So lowering your carbohydrates and concentrating on carbohydrates that are low on the glycemic index, and then adding 20 minutes of movement per day. Non-intensity, just get your body moving every day, build that habit of movement, all right? And then if you graduate to phase 2, which is when you got 15 to 30 pounds to lose, you're in that 20 to 30% body fat range. Try to only eat out 4 to 6 times a month. And I know people that eat out every day or almost every day, and that's probably sustaining you where you are, and you're probably trying to do better or trying to lose weight or trying to get a little bit healthier, and you're just stuck. And I think this is a big part of the reason why, combined with the next part, right, which is that less alcohol. And if you are more likely to eat out dinner, these two things probably go hand in hand. So if you reduce one, you'll reduce the other, and vice versa. Right? 25 grams of protein per meal. Doesn't matter how many meals you eat. That's what you want to shoot for in every one. And if you're a snacker, consider a snack a meal, because it's going to add up calorically just like any other meal. Okay, so you need to have 25 grams of protein in that snack. All right, 30 plus minutes of movement. So just a little bit more than phase 1, but now we're adding in 2 times a week of strength training. Okay, and then the last phase, 15 pounds to lose, 20% body fat, trying to get under 20% body fat. And this is where you got to do the more difficult stuff, which is measuring your food and planning your meals. And I'm going to do a whole video on the best way to meal plan, or at least the best way that's worked for me and the people that I've worked with in the past, and things that I think might be helpful to you. So look for that in the near future. And now we're elevating that 30 minutes to 45 minutes of movement a day. If you're really fortunate and you have an active job, like that's a cheat code for me, right? I'm 10,000 steps a day easy because I'm on my feet all day working with members. So I get that as a bonus, and it's really great. But if you have a sedentary job, it's that much harder for you to lose weight because your body's not moving. And you've got to generate that movement, generate that metabolic burn. And the only way you can do that is if you actively take time out of your day to go move, okay? And then we're going to add in another strength training day throughout that. And then you're going for your ideal body weight in grams of protein, right? I hope you found that helpful. I can dig into any of these topics in more detail if you'd like. You can just comment and I'll try to help you through that. And then I am going to do something on meal prepping in the future and try to give you good strategies that aren't too complicated in your life to do that. All right, thanks for watching.